Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward Friends. On today's episode of the podcast, we're talking about communicating with your customers about race. This is really topical right now for all the obvious reasons. We're going to build off the last episode where we were talking about talking to your team and how to approach conversations with your team about entitlement and race. So before we get started today, I just wanted to mention thank you to those who have been asking how they can support the podcast financially. The best way for our listeners to support this podcast is by going and buying merch off our website. And you can do that at mapperforward.org/merch and grab a t-shirt or a cap or a Peace, Love and Peanut Butter keychain. And that really helps a lot. We don't want to put the content behind a paywall. So this is a way that you can support the podcast, and we ship worldwide. So now let's talk about how you talk to your customers about race and equality and all of the things that people are being held account to right now. And why I thought this was important was because I received a very interesting message on the Elixir Specialty Coffee. It wasn't a message, it was a comment. The Elixir Specialty Coffee Instagram page. And it said, this was not from a customer, but it could have been. I just know for a fact that this person is not a customer. And this person said something, and I'm paraphrasing here. Could you please publicly tell us what you were doing internally and externally to squash, or to dismantle was the word that they used, to dismantle white supremacy, racism, and police brutality? And I thought, what an interesting statement from somebody who is virtue signaling by leaving a comment like that. This person, again, is not even a follower of our page. And they're not a customer. They've never ordered from us before. So the action unto itself is virtue signaling. They want people to know that they're coming on our page and asking us these things. But second of all, I can't fix white supremacy, racism, and police brutality as a business owner of Elixir Specialty Coffee on my own. Elixir Specialty Coffee cannot fix white supremacy, police brutality, and racism on our own. When you group think and you think it's a great idea to go and do these kinds of things, it doesn't lead people into wanting to engage you. So I really wanted to say that before we go on this exploration for how to talk to your customers. Those kinds of people who are leaving comments like that, and I know that there are businesses all over the world that are getting shitty comments like that right now, that's not who you are going to be creating a response for. Who you are going to be creating a response for are your real customers, the people who engage in your business and your content and either regularly or occasionally buy from you. Why is this important? Well, because it's important. It is important for you to let people know where you sit on this issue. Because hate it, love it, whatever you want to think about the fact that you need to do this, it's a part of what people are requiring from your business right now. Much like people are requiring you to make statements about how you feel about climate change. Much like people are requiring you to make a statement about what the values of your company are. Right now, and moving forward for good from now on, people want to know where you sit with regards to race relations. And as long as you are not a white supremacist and that you don't encourage police brutality and you are not a racist, you shouldn't have a problem with it. So how do you go about having this conversation with your customers? Okay, so again, I want to encourage authenticity, openness, vulnerability. If you don't know where you sit on this, say that. Say that you are starting a journey to understand the subject. How do you say that? Where do you say that? You say that on a multitude of different platforms. So this conversation, the conversation in Rabbit's Ears that we're going to be referring to during this episode of the podcast, the conversation is going to be had directly with one-on-one customers. It's going to be had on your website through blog posts and through landing pages. It's going to be had in emails, through your mailing list. It's going to be had on social media, through your stories, through your posting, through video on YouTube channels. If you have a podcast, it's going to be had that way. But the worst thing that you can do right now for your business and for the future of the viability of your business is to say nothing. And the reason is because that's a cop-out. What it tells people is that you don't want to engage in the discussion. And what you'll find is that like with things like climate change, they become more and more poignant. Customers are going to be making decisions based around whether you make statements about your relationship with racism or not. So, me as a business owner, I'm taking this week to formulate a blog post that makes our position as a company incredibly crystal clear when it comes to race, when it comes to gender, when it comes to people's sexual orientation, and how we approach those issues in the business. So I'm doing this because I think it's important to my customers to know where we stand on this. Is every customer going to care? No, they're not. Are some customers going to care? Yes, absolutely. More importantly, I care that people know where we sit on this issue. And I can care about that because something that I've left off all of the discussions that I realize that I should have had front and center of everything that we've been talking about in the last couple of episodes around race is empathy. Empathy is it's the important sprinkle that brings this whole conversation together. We should be more empathetic with our customers' needs and with our suppliers' needs and with our employees' needs. So that's why we should be having this conversation with our customers. Make sure that before you decide to have this conversation, that you check the tone of the discussion that you're having. The objective is not to be defensive. The objective is to step into your vulnerability. And for a lot of people, this is going to be confronting because you're going to be coming up against the realization that you have far more entitlement than you realize that you did. And that can be very confronting. That's okay. This is a journey for all of us. This is a journey for all of us to understand what our role has been as a part of this system that is fundamentally and at its core rotten. It's a system that could have been much more virtuous than it is, much more righteous than it is, but it's not. And the reason is because the rot that turned a system that could have worked into a system that is primarily broken is corruption. A lot of the ideologies that exist behind the systems that we operate in are actually quite virtuous. But corruption is what has caused this situation to happen. And if you don't believe me, take a deep dive into the history of the coffee industry and take a look at how it was started and how it is built fundamentally off slavery in coffee plantations in Haiti. And you will be mortified by what you see. That is what we are built off. And that was all stemming from corruption and inequality. And we have continued, whether we say we knew or not, is irrelevant. We are a part of a system that benefits of the pain of others directly now. The people who are producing coffee are not receiving fair compensation for what they're doing. And that should be a part of the discussion when you talk to your customers about where you sit on race. Because you can't talk about how you personally feel about race and still be contributing to a system that actively profits off the unjust labor compensation of others. It's not fair. It's not virtuous. And you're going to get exposed. In the climate that we're in, this fuckery is not going to hold anymore. And that's not a bad thing. That's a really, really good thing. It's something the coffee value chain has needed for a long time. And we're going to be an active participants in helping to expose it. It's something that we started a couple of years ago, and we're continuing with the discussions that we're having on this podcast. The last thing that I want to advocate for as a part of your discussion with your customers around race is that you have an action plan. The information that you put out to your customers about where you sit on this should also talk about where you could do better. And in stepping into that vulnerability, what you're saying to people is, we have taken on board and charged ourselves with the mission, the responsibility of learning. There's an arrogance in saying, I've got nothing to learn from this. When I moved to this country and I thought I understood racism, damn, was I served a healthy dose of, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, Lee. My ignorance about this culture, new culture that I was going to be living in for however long I live here, helped me understand that I didn't know shit about this subject. And 4 years into, I carve out time every week to explore, particularly the Black culture in this country and Black history. I carve out time every week to learn about it. I still don't know even close to what I need to know. But I do understand that it is a very different experience to the racism that I've experienced back home in Australia, which I think is just what the kind of racism that goes on in Australia is fucking terrible. This is a whole new level. And so stepping into that, explaining where our learning as a business needs to go and how we can better inform ourselves is going to be important. We have hired every kind of diversity group ever. And we're proud of that. We're proud of the fact that we encourage and invest in things other than with money. We pour time into people, and that's awesome. Where could we do better? We could do better with informing our customers about the value chain exposures, about how we as a business have unknowingly participated in indentured servitude through participating in the coffee supply chain. And we can be very transparent about how we're going to change that. So they are the things that that I'm going to be doing as a business owner in communicating with my customers how we're going to be changing this. And I'm going to be communicating it through our mailing list and through our blog. We're going to be recording a video about it, and I'm going to do it live so that people know it's not rehearsed, and that I am being it's why I do our conversations on the podcast live with guests, so that people can see that they're real. Any of the pre-recorded episodes of this podcast that end up going up are all done one take. We don't re-record anything. We don't edit anything. And the reason is because we value authenticity. We value integrity. Do the same thing with your customers. Show them that you are not only talking the talk, but you're backing it up with action. So show them what your action plan is going to be. I hope this has been helpful. I know that this is something that a lot of people have been wondering how they're going to address. Don't half-ass this. I think that's an Australian term, I'm not sure, but don't do this halfway, because there are people waiting to pounce on you as a business owner and destroy you. I've watched it happen online, where one day a business existed and the next day their staff walked out because they were getting bullied online from people who shamed them as employees of a company that didn't have a clear stance on this matter. And I don't want that to happen to anybody. Step into what your truth is, cop to what you're not doing, what you could be doing better at, and show how you're going to be doing it. And your customers will really appreciate that. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.